It was still dark in New York City on the morning of December 4th, 2024. The streets of Midtown Manhattan were beginning to wake up, but the day had not fully started yet. Office buildings stood tall and quiet. Hotel doors opened and closed as early guests moved in and out. Taxis passed slowly, their lights reflecting on the pavement. Nothing about that morning suggested it would become one of the most shocking crimes the city would see that year. At approximately 6:45 a.m., Brian Thompson, the 50-year-old chief executive officer of UnitedHealthcare, stepped onto the sidewalk near his hotel. He was in New York to attend the company's annual investor conference, an event that had been planned for months. According to prosecutors, Thompson was walking alone, dressed neatly, heading toward the location of the meeting. He did not appear to be in a hurry. There was no visible security detail around him at that moment. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Surveillance cameras later reviewed by police showed a masked man approaching from behind. The suspect was wearing a beanie and a face covering that concealed most of his identity. Without warning, the man raised a gun and fired multiple shots into Thompson's back. Thompson collapsed onto the sidewalk. The shooter turned and walked away calmly, disappearing into the surrounding streets before anyone could react. Emergency services were called almost immediately. Police officers and paramedics rushed to the scene, but Brian Thompson was pronounced dead shortly afterward. News of the killing spread fast. Within hours, the story was everywhere. A major corporate executive had been gunned down in public in one of the busiest parts of New York City during the early morning rush. The NYPD launched a massive investigation. Detectives canvassed the area, collected shell casings, and reviewed dozens of security cameras from nearby buildings and traffic poles. One thing quickly became clear: the shooting was not random. Investigators said the suspect appeared to know exactly where Thompson would be and when he would be there. Later that same day, police released images taken from surveillance footage. The photos showed a man of average build, wearing dark clothing, a beanie, and a medical-style face mask. His posture was relaxed. He did not appear panicked. He did not run. This calm behavior immediately drew attention and concern from investigators. As the city processed the shock, a nationwide manhunt quietly began. Over the next several days, tips poured in from across the country. People claimed to recognize the suspect. Others offered theories. Federal agencies joined the search. The FBI began assisting the NYPD, treating the case as a potential interstate matter. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, something unusual happened. In November 2024, weeks before the shooting, a woman had contacted the San Francisco Police Department to report her son missing. His name was Luigi Mangione. He was 26 years old. According to the report, she had last heard from him months earlier and could not reach him. At the time, the report did not attract national attention. After the NYPD released images of the shooting suspect, law enforcement officers in San Francisco reportedly noticed similarities between the missing person photos and the man in the surveillance images. The resemblance was not enough for an arrest, but it was enough to raise concern. This information was quietly shared between agencies as the investigation continued. For 5 days, the suspect remained at large. Then, on December 9th, 2024, more than 280 miles away from New York City, the case took a dramatic turn. It was late morning at a McDonald's restaurant in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Customers were eating breakfast and lunch, going about an ordinary day. Inside the restaurant, employees noticed a man sitting alone. He was wearing a medical mask and a beanie pulled low over his head. Some customers believed he looked like the suspect whose image had been circulating nationwide. The tension grew quietly. Eventually, a McDonald's manager decided to call 911. During the call, the manager told the dispatcher that customers were concerned because the man resembled the suspect wanted in the New York shooting. Police were dispatched to the restaurant. When officers arrived, they approached the man calmly. He was cooperative but cautious. When asked for identification, he handed over a New Jersey driver's license bearing the name Mark Rosario. According to police, something about the interaction did not feel right. The ID appeared suspicious. Officers detained the man and ran fingerprint checks. The results came back quickly. The man was not Mark Rosario. His real name was Luigi Nicholas Mangione. At that moment, the manhunt ended. Police searched Mangione's backpack. According to prosecutors, inside they found a 3D printed handgun, a suppressor, and ammunition. Investigators later said the weapon was consistent with a firearm used in the killing of Brian Thompson, though forensic testing would be required to confirm that claim. Also found in the backpack was a handwritten document. Prosecutors described it as a manifesto. According to court filings, the document expressed hostility toward health insurance, companies, and corporate leadership. Authorities would later argue this document showed motive. The defense would strongly dispute that interpretation. Mangione was taken into custody and held at the Blair County Prison in Pennsylvania. He was formally charged there with several offenses, including carrying an unlicensed firearm, forgery, possession of instruments of crime, and providing false identification to law enforcement. Later that same day, New York prosecutors announced that Mangione had been charged with second-degree murder in Manhattan. The charges alleged that he intentionally caused the death of Brian Thompson. News of the arrest spread quickly. Within hours, Mangione's name was known nationwide. Details about his background began to emerge. Mangione had grown up in Maryland. He was described as intelligent and academically gifted. He attended the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in engineering. Friends and former classmates expressed shock. Some said they had lost contact with him months earlier and had no idea where he had gone. On December 17, 2024, a Manhattan grand jury indicted Mangione on 11 state charges. These included second-degree murder, multiple weapons charges, and stalking-related counts. Prosecutors alleged that Mangione had planned the attack and followed Thompson in the days leading up to the shooting. 2 days later, on December 19th, Mangione was extradited to New York City. He appeared in Manhattan Supreme Court under heavy security. The courtroom was packed with reporters. Mangione wore jail clothing and remained quiet as the charges were read. He entered a plea of not guilty, but the case did not stop at the state level. Federal prosecutors soon announced separate charges. These included murder, stalking, and firearms offenses. Because the crime crossed state lines and involved alleged planning and travel, the federal government asserted jurisdiction. Most significantly, federal prosecutors indicated they would seek the death penalty if Mangione were convicted. This announcement shocked many legal observers. Federal executions are rare, and even rarer in cases connected to crimes in New York City. Mangione's legal team immediately pushed back. They argued that the evidence against him had been gathered improperly. One of their main arguments centered on the search of his backpack at the McDonald's. They claimed police searched it without a warrant, violating his constitutional rights. Prosecutors responded by saying the search was lawful and that a warrant was obtained shortly afterward. This dispute became one of the central battles of the pretrial phase. In early 2025, Mangione appeared in federal court in Manhattan for his arraignment. He again pleaded not guilty to all charges. He spoke little. His lawyers did most of the talking. Over the next several months, the case moved slowly through hearings and motions. Judges heard arguments about what evidence should be allowed at trial. Defense attorneys challenged the admissibility of the alleged manifesto, the firearm, and statements Mangione allegedly made after his arrest. Another major issue involved the fact that Mangione was facing both state and federal charges for the same act. His lawyers argued that trying him in both systems could violate protections against double jeopardy. Prosecutors countered that state and federal courts are separate jurisdictions, each with the right to prosecute. During one hearing, prosecutors played the 911 call from the McDonald's manager. The audio captured the moment an ordinary employee made a decision that ended a nationwide manhunt. The courtroom listened in silence as the caller described their fear and uncertainty. Other hearings focused on Mangione's movements in the days before the shooting. Prosecutors alleged that he had stayed at hostels in New York using false identification and had scouted the area near the hotel where Thompson was staying. Defense attorneys argued that much of this was circumstantial and speculative. In late 2025, a New York judge dismissed certain charges, including a terrorism-related count and first-degree murder allegations, stating prosecutors had not met the legal threshold required for those specific charges. The second-degree murder charge remained. As of early 2026, Mangione remains in federal custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He has been denied bail. He has not been convicted of any crime. The presumption of innocence legally remains in place. The federal judge overseeing the case has indicated that if the death penalty remains on the table, the trial process will take longer with extensive jury selection and additional safeguards. If capital punishment is removed, the trial could proceed sooner. Brian Thompson's family has remained mostly out of the public eye. UnitedHealthcare issued statements expressing grief and cooperation with law enforcement. The company increased security at public events. Public reaction to the case has been intense and divided. Some see Mangione as a cold, calculated killer. Others focus on due process and the dangers of media-driven narratives before a verdict is reached. What is clear is that the story is not finished. A quiet morning in Manhattan turned into a case that raised questions about security, justice, motive, and the limits of punishment. A missing person report turned into a murder investigation. A fast food restaurant became the final stop of a nationwide manhunt. Now, as courts prepare for what may be one of the most closely watched trials in years, the truth will eventually be tested not in headlines, but in evidence, testimony, and the judgment of a jury. And until that day comes, the case of Luigi Mangione remains unresolved, suspended between allegation and verdict, waiting for its final chapter.